Dun, 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 dun. Hi guys, I'm back. Yeah, I'm back in New York. Sorry I took the past couple weeks off. I was on vacation. A lot of stuff was happening. Didn't have time to upload. But now I'm back ready to kick off my summer with the best shark movie ever made. Jaws. So Jaws came out in 1975, was directed by Steven Spielberg, and this was the movie that made Spielberg a household name. Now Steven Spielberg had directed movies before, but this is the one that really put him on the map. And in 1975, when it came out, it was the highest grossing movie of all time. It broke all sorts of records, and it achieved this with a concept that's straight out of 50s sci-fi and monster movies, but it somehow resonated with everybody in America. And I think Jaws succeeds because it's so much more than just a monster movie. It's an adventure movie, it's a horror movie, it's a family movie. It defies categorization. And that's why whenever I'm talking about Jaws, I always ask people, do you consider Jaws a horror movie? Because on the surface, it seems pretty obvious. Of course it's a horror movie. It's about a shark that kills people in some pretty violent ways, and they have to kill it. That's a pretty basic horror movie premise. But what Spielberg does with Jaws is he really deconstructs this whole idea of a monster movie and makes it something so much more. In my opinion, Jaws has more in common with something like Moby Dick than the creature from the Black Lagoon. And what makes Moby Dick and Jaws also endure is that it's not always about the fish. It's about the people that are terrorized by this animal. So let's really dive in. Did I really just use that pun? Well, it's out of the way now. And let's see what Jaws is all about. So Jaws opens with what I can only assume is a typical 70s beach party, where you have a bunch of teenagers lounging around the beach, getting high, smoking, drinking, having a grand old time, making out with each other. It's a party, and there's a fire, and then all of a sudden a couple of kids have a bright idea of going skinny dipping in the ocean. And yeah, this is your basic horror movie opener with stupid teenagers doing stupid teenager stuff, and one of them gets a little too carried away and they die. And this scene follows that formula to a T. This one girl goes out a little too far in the ocean and a shark attacks her and she dies. But what Spielberg does so cleverly in this opening sequence is that he doesn't show the shark at all in this scene, and he really doesn't show the shark for the majority of the movie. It's really not until the end of the movie where you get a good look at him. And this is really effective because even though you don't see the shark, you see the girl getting tossed around, pulled from side to side. She's letting out these blood-curdling screams. It's quite terrifying. But at the end of the day, you don't see the shark. And by not showing the shark, it forces you to imagine what this shark is doing, and what your imagination can come up with is a lot more messed up than what you would actually see. But then the movie shifts, and it focuses a lot more on the town of Amity Island, where the movie takes place. And this is your basic Cape Cod-ish New England town. It's an island, so it's heavily reliant on tourism and summer dollars. And having open beaches that people can swim in is a big part of their economy. And it's here we're introduced to the Brodies, who just moved here from New York City. You have Chief Brody, played by Roy Scheider, who's terrified of the water. He won't go swimming anywhere, but he moved to this island to really make a difference in fighting crime because I guess New York City's just too far gone. And I really wish that wasn't true, but it probably is. And they're adjusting to life on this island, and it seems pretty good until he gets a call that this young lady got chopped up by a shark, and he's got to go investigate it. And for the next big chunk of this movie, the shark doesn't really play a huge role. Nobody really gets attacked. Nobody goes in the water. A lot of it is just the politics and compromising between Chief Brody, who wants to shut down the beaches completely until they've killed this shark, and Mayor Vaughn, who realizes that we can't shut down the beaches because we'll just bankrupt the entire island if we do. And it's about to be the 4th of July. You got a lot of tourists coming, having parties, having barbecues, having beach parties, whatever people do on the beach. So he feels an obligation to not destroy the economy and put thousands of people out of work, and I can kind of relate to that. But on the other hand, there is a killer shark out there that we should probably deal with quickly. So even though we don't get a whole lot of shark action here, we do still feel its effect and how just the presence of the shark in the water is messing up the psyche of this town. And that's why I don't see Jaws as a horror movie. I see it more as a Hitchcockian suspense thriller with a bit of an adventurous side towards the end. And when I'm talking about Hitchcock here, I'm not really talking about Psycho, which everybody knows. I'm talking more about his work on The Birds or North by Northwest or Vertigo, where there's not a whole lot happening, but you're still invested and you're on the edge of your seat because you know something's going to happen soon. And I think The Birds is a really good comparison here because the birds don't attack throughout the entire movie. They only attack in spurts and isolated scenes. But most of the movie is just birds sitting on lampposts and collecting on playgrounds and stuff. And that is far more terrifying than anything the birds actually do when they attack. It's the waiting and watching and seeing the danger out there, but realizing that there's nothing you can do about it. And that's Jaws. Jaws puts the danger out there in the water, keep all the main characters on land for the most part, and forces them to look out into that water and imagine what's out there and wait for something bad to happen. And naturally something bad does happen when there's a bunch of people on the beach and this small boy goes out there and go figure, the beaches are open, it's going to attract a shark, and it does. And this boy dies. And now at this point, the secret's out. There is a shark in the water. It's killing people. It was a bad idea to keep the beaches open. The mayor is in some hot water. The mother of the boy that got killed put out a bounty on this shark, which of course attracts all the fishermen from all over the New England area and New York and New Jersey and everywhere, really. Anyone that has a fishing pole is out there hunting this shark. And they do end up catching a shark. They catch a tiger shark that they think is the one that killed the boy, but upon further inspection it turns out, no, it's not. It just swam up from Louisiana. So this killer shark is still out there. It's still a danger. These wannabe shark hunters have not fulfilled their job. So now let's talk about two more chief characters that get introduced around this time. You have Hooper, who's this marine biologist. He came up from the university to investigate this shark attack, and he's played by Richard Dreyfuss, and he brings a more scientific approach to this whole shark hunting operation. And then you have probably my favorite character in this movie, Quint, or should I say Captain Quint. He deserves it. He's a captain. And he is played incredibly by Robert Shaw. Now, Robert Shaw, he's been in a bunch of stuff. He's a great character actor. He's been in The Sting and James Bond and a bunch of other stuff. But he really does shine in Jaws. Everybody shines in Jaws, really. From Shaw's rugged, Ahab-inspired Quint, to Dreyfuss's dorky Jeff Bridges from King Kong type scientist, to Roy Scheider's more collected, level-headed chief of police. All these actors shine in this movie because they all know who the real star is. It's the shark. And because they're all technically supporting characters, they get to have fun with their performances and their characterizations. They joke around when it's appropriate, and they get dead serious when it's appropriate. And all three of these characters have such distinct personalities that you feel like they're not acting. You feel like that it's their real personality coming through. So now let's talk about when this movie really starts to pick up in the intensity. And that's the hunt. Hooper and Brody hop aboard Quint's ship, the Orca, to go hunt this shark.
I'll follow him around the Horn, and around the Norway Maelstrom, and around Perdition's flames before I give him up.
But all joking aside, as much as I do love the on-land sequences, and it does so much to flesh out the town and the realism of this otherwise a bit goofy and silly premise, when they start hunting this shark on the open water, it gets intense. He still doesn't use the shark too often, but he uses every trick in the book to have things to represent the shark and create suspense. The clicking of a fishing line, barrels popping to the surface, the music. I'll talk about the music at the end, but all these things do a great job to create suspense and terror at the idea of this shark swimming around the boat. But just because things are heating up and getting intense doesn't mean that our three heroes can't have a good old night of drinking and storytelling and letting off some steam. And while this may seem like a filler scene or like the momentum's kind of dipping down, this is one of the best scenes in the whole movie. It starts off with Quint and Hooper comparing scars from different shark attacks and animal attacks and other marine life attacks. And a great little character moment that I never realized before is that Brody doesn't join in the scar conversation. He doesn't show off any of his scars. He does lift his shirt briefly to look at a scar on his stomach, and then he puts it down and doesn't say anything. And I can't help but wonder, since he was a cop in New York for so long, is that a bullet hole? Is it from a knife? Or was it something as silly as getting your appendix removed? We don't really know, but I'm glad that they included that because it tells us a bit more about what Brody thinks of his own scars compared to these other guys. But then these stories start turning to something a bit more serious when Shaw goes on his monologue about the USS Indianapolis. And this was a top secret World War II operation of getting the nuclear bomb across the Pacific so they could drop it on Hiroshima. And when the ship was going down and the crew was getting picked off one by one from sharks, Shaw was there and he survived, but many people didn't. This is such a great character building moment because at this point everyone else is pretty well fleshed out. You know Brody's backstory, you know Hooper's backstory, and they all look like pretty normal guys. But Quint is a character straight out of Moby Dick. He is Ahab. He looks like a cartoon of Ahab and he talks like it and he acts like it. And up until this point he was the one character that you really couldn't relate to on that deeper level. And after he tells this story, your heart goes out to him. You feel his pain and everything makes sense. You understand why he acts the way he does. You understand why he looks the way he does. Everything about his character that you kind of took for granted or thought was, oh, that's ridiculous, it's an exaggeration, all of a sudden becomes completely plausible just from that one story. But a night of storytelling and scar comparing and sea shantying can't go on for too long because there's a shark outside in the water and he's getting bored. So the attacks start coming and we have a bit more shark action. We see the shark and it's not the most realistic looking shark, but it's good enough. Compared to what the later Jaws movies were able to do, this really is the best looking shark that we've had in this entire franchise. And this climax is just phenomenal. The shark jumps on top of the boat, eats Quint, bites off his torso, takes him under. Quint's bleeding out the mouth and everywhere. It's very disturbing and probably the bloodiest death scene that we've had so far. But as sad as it is to see Quint die, you really wouldn't want him to go out any other way than this. With half of his body in the jaws of the shark and him stabbing at it with a knife with his last breath.
From hell's heart, I stab at thee. For hate's sake, I spit my last breath.
The Moby Dick comparisons write themselves. And after that, the boat's sinking super fast. Hooper's been overboard for a little bit after a mishap he had with a shark cage. So the last man standing is Chief Brody sitting on the mast with his rifle, watching him approach with an oxygen tank sticking out of his mouth. He says,
"Smile, you son of a..."
and the shark is dead. Hooper resurfaces and the two of them have a laugh and see them swimming back to shore on some floating debris. And that's really where the movie ends. You don't see them actually reach the shore. You don't see how the community reacts to this shark being dead. And I really see it as like a Karate Kid type ending or a Rocky ending, where you don't see the aftermath of the big finale. You don't see them go home. You don't see them ice their wounds, because that's not important. What's important is that the shark is dead and we're all safe now. And so I think Spielberg was smart in ending it where he did, to give the audience a small breather and then letting us go. And those are my thoughts on Jaws. Jaws is a phenomenal movie. It's a great movie to watch any time of the year, but especially in the summer. It just has that hot summer atmosphere of the beach and hot dogs and all that. And while it may make a lot of people not want to go back in the water, it never had that effect on me. I just see it as a lot of fun. It's an adventure. It's suspenseful. It's intense when it needs to be. It's funny when it needs to be. It has relatable characters and incredible music. Let's talk about that music real quick. John Williams did the music for Jaws and would collaborate with Steven Spielberg on pretty much all of his projects after this. And there's a good reason for it. John Williams knocked it out of the park with this score. The theme from Jaws is one of those themes that's probably become more famous than the movie that it's from. And with a movie like Jaws that was so popular and still is, that's really saying something. John Williams created such an intense determination with two notes that you really couldn't get by a purely visual medium. And Spielberg has gone on the record saying that about half the success of Jaws is just because of John Williams' music. And I agree with him. This is a phenomenal score to a phenomenal movie. If you've never seen it, watch it. What are you waiting for? And if you haven't seen it in a while or haven't seen it yet, this summer, pop it in. You'll have a great time, I guarantee it. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content. And hit the notification bell to be notified every time I upload a video. And as always, I'm Colby. This is my Nerdy Talk. And I'll see you in the next video.